Hi, this is JoAnna Brandi, and welcome to Living on the Growing Edge. It's a crazy, changing, evolving, and expanding world. So staying ahead today means more than just keeping up. It means exploring the frontiers of thought, innovation, ideation. In this long-form video series, I bring you face-to-face with visionaries, disruptors, thinkers who are shaping tomorrow's workplaces and worlds by living out on the growing edge. They're reframing, reimagining, and re-envisioning. And as I learned from my first guest, reinventing. So I'm happy you're here. Enjoy the series. You can always leave comments below and be sure to subscribe while you're here. Good morning. This is JoAnna Brandi, and I am here today on the Growing Edge with Barbara Biziou. Barbara is a global ritual expert. And I teach in my positive leadership training that ritual is very important to leaders and to teams. So Barbara's going to explain to us why. Now, Barbara has had quite a career. She's not only a global ritual expert, a spiritual activator, she's been a fashion executive, she's been a TV producer, she's been a corporate trainer. She connects and empowers her clients. She does, you do tours to Egypt now, Barbara, which I think is fascinating. Where else do you take people on your in search of ritual?
Search of ritual? Well, right now we're really focusing on the United States. So
yeah, well, right after September 11, right?
Right. So we're really, concentrating now on different cultures here. And since I live in New York City, that's really easy because there's every culture in the world right here. Yes.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. And I did see your Instagram post yesterday on September 11th, which was heartwarming. So thank you. Thank you for the work you do. I find that by following you on Instagram, it's a lovely breather in my day, especially when you do lives. It's really wonderful because they don't take long. And that's a great thing about ritual. They don't have to take long, but they bookend an activity so well. I teach my clients who are mostly young leaders that they have to build ritual in. So I want to talk to you about it first. We don't need to talk about what I do. I'll work it right in. So take us back to how, let me mention as well that you are, she's the author of 2 books that are really beautiful. One is called The Joy of Ritual, and the other one is called The Joy of Family Ritual. And I gave my copy of The Joy of Family Ritual to my daughter. Her daughters were brought up in Waldorf schools, and they use ritual a lot. So even though they no longer go to Waldorf, they have built they've built all the rituals in the Candlemas around Christmas time and the saying grace. It's so wonderful to be there, and especially see the little ones, and they're not so little anymore, that just built it into what they do. Every time there's a birthday, they still celebrate a lot of the ancient rituals. And I think that's so perfect. Why do you think that's a good thing to do? What does ritual do?
Ritual gives meaning and purpose into your life. And also ritual brings you together. I mean, you were talking about 9/11. Yesterday I was at Lincoln Center. A friend of mine, Jackie Buglese, does this table of silence every year where she has 100 dancers, every race, every religion, every culture, every age, from kids to, 80, 90-year-olds. And what that does is it gives people a commonality, a thread to connect together. And I think that's one of the things ritual does. It also gives you a structure. It allows you to move from one state to another, whether it's emotionally, physically, mentally. So that also is something that it really helps. I mean, I love the fact that, this, when I started out, people thought I was a little bit nuts talking about ritual and corporations. Now you go to Harvard Business Review and you just Google business rituals for success, and all of these things pop up, So it's moved from one state of being woo-woo to understanding that neuroscience really agrees with me that rituals can change your brain, and they can really help and be very productive in your life and in your business.
Absolutely. And it is funny because you and I have been around for a long enough time that we were way out on the growing edge where people are like, oh, let's stay away from them, they're a little too strange, to now being embraced, especially by Harvard. With Arthur Brooks there, and there's one of the people I interviewed recently, Matt George, teaches there. Uh, they are finally saying, yes, this is true, this is real. I like the fact that there's science to go along with it, because there are many people that don't have a framework for believing why it works. But when you give them the science, they go, oh, okay, that makes sense.
Right. Yes. And like you said, it doesn't have to be long and complicated. It could
Oh,
be, I mean, certainly we can do hour-long rituals, day-long rituals, weekend, rituals, but it could be as simple as you said with your family, just sitting down and saying grace before a meal, or in a business meeting, start with acknowledging people's successes, just one success, and go around the room, whether it's on Zoom or if it's in person, and just acknowledging people. That's a ritual that already starts with gratitude and appreciation. And as you know, everyone wants to be seen. Everybody wants to be acknowledged. Some might be more shy about it, but deep down, everyone wants that acknowledgement. So even just kind of weaving that into your business meeting or your monthly, sales meeting, whatever it is, can make a huge difference.
Oh, I think it does. And I find over time, sometimes the people I work with, I'm working with over a period of time. And I love working with the young leaders just because I don't get as much pushback. And we start everyone with gratitude.
Right.
A group I belong to, we start with wins. It doesn't really matter what it is as long as you start with celebration, as long as you start with something that acknowledges people for their strengths and the goodness that they have before you start the meeting.
Right. I agree. And also to, give it a structure, especially during COVID, when everybody was online, it was so easy for people to space out in a meeting. Very, it still is when, I listen to some of my younger clients who, oh no, no one turns on the video during the meeting. No one does, and it's like, where are these people? They're just very introverted and shy. However, it doesn't always help the meeting because you don't know where people are. You can't read them. As we know, body language is so important in building that sense of knowledge about somebody. You really need to
The
know
sense
that.
of team and the sense of team.
Right.
Yeah, and I find that challenging when people don't come on board. I am finding though, and maybe it's the groups that I'm in nowadays, almost everybody turns their camera on. And that usually has something to do with the leader
Yes.
who states that up front, you're present in this meeting, I want to see your face. And of course, if you're in a compromising situation where you can't, or you're driving or something like that, okay, we understand. But I am feeling very good about the fact that more and more people are showing up in a Zoom room instead of way back when.
Right.
Yeah,
Yes. Yeah.
very,
Yeah. Things are shifting again, which is great.
I love it. I love it. Now you're also a communications expert. So
Okay.
how do you, well, you are positive psychology, you're a positive PQ, positive intelligence. I know that you study positive intelligence and communication. How do you bring that into organizations or wherever you bring things? Because you don't just go to organizations, you work with all kinds of groups of people.
Again, I always go back to the word communication. It means to make common. So how do we open that up so that there's you're not just talking, you're talking and listening and assimilating, and, how do you let people really brainstorm without stopping them? And there's so many levels to all of that, as you know. But the first thing is just to be aware of what is your communication style and what is the other person's communication style.
Right.
I mean, in my real corporate days, I'd always give out, assessments, because it kind of takes it out of the personal, in the sense of, oh, okay, so this is my style, and I certainly can shift it a little bit, but it's just my style. That's all it is. It's not me necessarily. So I think that's also very important. As some people, like me, for example, I talk and think out loud. My thinking process is I have to talk it out loud. Other people need to go away and have quiet, and you need
Right.
to understand those kind of things. So if you're creating, quote, a communication ritual, part of it would be everybody together brainstorming, and part of it would be everybody either quiet writing or leave the room and then come back, so you have to adjust it to the whole group. And that way it gives everybody a chance to be heard.
Lovely. Lovely. And that's so important.
And again, so simple. We're not talking about
I know.
complicated. It's just very simple. Become aware of that. Not everyone is going to be like you, and also don't take that personally. That's a big thing too, is you can't always take it personally.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I had something happen recently that I was thrilled about. I when I work with in my positive leadership practice, when I work with the group, they are online doing the textbook learning stuff that I've put together. But then we come together on a weekly basis for wisdom circles. And like I said, many of them are young. And so they have experience. They're all experienced managers, but they're younger than I am. Let me put it in perspective. They're younger than I am. So some of the ideas and the organization they work for is extremely structured. But in this container, in the wisdom circle container, it's as if we give them permission to think very differently. And I talk about the fact that when I was as a consultant when I was in the corporation, but also as a consultant, very often when I put meetings together, I take away the table. Not easy to do, by the way, in the corporate world. They're like, you want to do what? I take away the table and put a candle on the floor in the middle of a circle, and then explain to people that just like the hub of a wheel, there are spokes going out to each person. So I just started explaining this to them one day. I don't know where it came from. I just started explaining it. And I was so happy and proud, because when the group came together the next time and we talked about their wins and what they've done differently and how they're practicing positive leadership, this one gentleman who I never would have predicted it, never. He's quiet. He's taciturn, I would say. He's not very outgoing. And he said, I took the table away. I sat with people in a circle and we talked, and the conversation was different.
Yeah.
So he was able to see for himself, and you don't always have to take the table away. Sometimes you just have to not stand up, because the moment you as the leader stand up, you're saying, I am above you. And the hierarchy shows right through. And that particular company has a very strong hierarchy. So it's so wonderful to watch these young people who are they're actually practicing what they're learning.
Yeah, no, that's great. And, just the fact that you can take people to a coffee shop, or
Yeah.
you can go to someplace out of their normal realm of, working, where they could just be creative. It's like someone sent me an email this morning. I think it was from Joseph Campbell, actually, who I always adored. He was a mentor, and saying you need a room of your own where you just could be creative, where you're not checking, your email, where you're not looking at the news, where you're not doing your normal things, just a different space. And for some people, it's, going out to a coffee shop or sitting in the park, or, whatever it is. And just changing that out can make such a huge difference about what comes through you, and you open up your creative expression in a different way. It's very empowering.
I think it is, especially if you're in nature, and you know where I go. I go right to the beach. I go right to, but I'm not above asking people I know, because you walk on the beach, you meet people that live on the beach.
Right.
And when I hear, so I just did this the other night, a gentleman that I walk with sometimes was telling me he was going away for several months. I said, I would like to house sit for you. I'm working on a book and I would love to have a space where I need to spread out. And doing that in an office is really hard to do. But he turned me down, as others have in the past, but doesn't keep me from asking, because one of these days I'm going to find somebody with a view of the ocean that says, sure, bring all your stuff over there and work for 3 months.
Right. Yeah.
But it is interesting to see how we all have so many different styles in working, in communicating. I'm curious about something. You often mention your teachers. And I know that you, as well as I, have studied with Angelise Arian. She was one of my main teachers for a long time. Angelise Arian, who passed about 12 years ago, I think,
Yeah.
was a cross-cultural anthropologist.
Yes.
So learning from her was glorious because I knew that what she taught came from all the indigenous cultures around the world. So if you'd spend a minute talking about your experience with Angelise and maybe some of the other teachers, because I think people, I think people go, wow, they studied with all these teachers, but what is the gem that you took from each one of them that you bring into your work to make your work so meaningful?
Well, I loved Angela. She was amazing.
Yeah.
And I actually, the last time I was with her, it's when she was working on, she just put out her newer book about aging and about stages of life after. And I remember we were talking and she said to me, which I was really taken aback, actually. She said, Barbara, I just have to tell you, I love the fact that you're integrating all of these things into your work and you're living it. And I thought, wow, because I had put her up on a pedestal that she knows all this stuff and I don't know as much.
So when you said that, yeah.
But the
Wow.
truth is, I mean, that has always been, when I look at the different teachers I've worked with, I always find something that resonates with me and I assimilate it. So whether it be, using the concept of a talking stick in a meeting, or, whether when I worked with Joy, who is one of my big teachers, who was a cardiologist. He was the head of cardiology in San Diego, a doctor. He was one of the first doctors who actually brought in the whole idea of mind body healing and Jungian psychology and shadow and everything. And the fact that he was actually a medical professional meant that a lot of people who came to his workshops were at that level. There were a lot of very high, very intelligent, learned, people in all professions. So I not only learned from him, but I got to learn from all the people who were there. Brew was the teacher who really opened my eyes to the power of ritual. He's the one who really not explained it experientially. I went through a ritual with him that gave me a lot of healing, and that was really the door opener for me to then go study with the Angelines, to go study with Native Americans or Hawaiian shamans or Peruvian shamans or whoever it was, because that door opened and it was like, wow,
Wow.
that's amazing. And then going, from there, which we talk about, most people think it's way too out there, to, talking to someone about what does the tea ritual in Japan really mean? And the bottom line is it's a friendship ritual. It's a time when you really honor the person you're having tea with, even the way you pour the tea and you hold the cup and you share and you speak. And it was like, wow, every culture has rituals that were meant to bring people together and also to honor transitions, to honor the happy times, the sad times, the grieving times, and it's that container again, it's that structure. And this is a new world. So we do need some new rituals too. And that's really where, for me, I jumped in and go, wow, I got permission in a sense from these teachers to go out and create my own rituals, because the old ones are fabulous if you believe in them and they work. But if you don't, then you need new ones. And that's really where my expertise has really come in, and my passion. I love creating new rituals for people all the time. That's something I love. And I'll explain, this is how they do it, blah, 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 in different traditions. But without, we also have to be very aware of cultural appropriation and not just taking somebody's,
Yeah.
sacred ritual and making it very woo-woo, to really honor it. But almost all the rituals that I've taught that are more traditional, I've been given permission to teach. So I feel pretty good about that.
Wow. And what are some of them?
Well, just like a karma clearing or ancestral ritual that I learned from Dr. Pillai, and he basically said, go out and share it, so it's not like you just stole his, Hindu ritual and did it. So things like that, or when I was in Hawaii and I learned Ho'oponopono maybe 30 years ago, and again, I was with families who did it every night, just like that was their good night ritual, was Ho'oponopono with their family. For those people who don't know what I'm talking about, Ho'oponopono means to make right. In the Hawaiian culture and traditional Hawaiian shamanism, they believe that no matter what happens to you is a reflection of what is going on in your family, in your group, in your community, so that you take responsibility for everything that happens. And in a way, you're owning it and you're taking responsibility for it. And then you're also forgiving, so it's a way of owning it and sharing it, and then basically asking spirit to take it from you if it's too hard. So my friends Alan and his wife used to do it with their children every night. So when their kids came home from school, they talk about, oh, somebody bullied somebody in the classroom, which meant the energy of bullying was present in their family. So, and it could have been, I'm making this up, their aunt was a bully, or, somebody else, and they kind of took on that energy. But to make it very simple, they would just honor it, notice it, share it. And then if they couldn't handle the energy themselves, then they turn it over to spirit. In Ho'oponopono, there's 4 parts. You say, I love you. It's a way of connecting to your creator, your spirit, whatever you believe. And then, please forgive me. I'm sorry. So if somehow I'm resonating with this pattern and I don't even know it, please forgive me. Or if I am doing something to make it worse, show me so I could clear it up. And then thank you to the creator, to the family, to the community for helping me clear it. And so you never go to bed with all this heaviness on your heart. You're clearing it before you go to sleep. And that, I was very touched by the practical way that they were doing this ritual. Right now you could Google it, and people have written a lot of books about it and stuff. But this to me was a very normal, practical way a family did it, and I love that.
I love that. It's clearing, it's clearing that space. It's clearing away anything that could have happened during the day that might upset your sleep. I think sleep rituals are really important. You've probably been, I'm sure you and I read a lot of the same stuff, but sleep is an issue, a big issue. I have sleep issues. I hate to admit I have sleep issues. I'm well trained for happiness and well-being and all that, but I still have sleep issues. And so I read everything. And that way of clearing away the day is important, that disconnecting. And too many of us are using our devices. And even though I think I might not be, I'll tell people I don't want to talk on the phone after 1 o'clock, which cuts my social life, which I don't like. But the sleep issue has to be dealt with. But that whole thing of letting go of the day.
Yes.
Whether journaling, Ho'oponopono, which I like doing. I like doing it. And I have Insight Timer, which is a meditation app on my phone.
Right.
So a whole meditation. And sometimes I find when I wake up in the middle of the night, I turn that on and then just listen to it over and over again. And eventually it's like, okay, well, that just took everything away. Now I can go to sleep.
Yeah. So one of the rituals that I really like to do at night, it helps you for sleep, but it also helps you build confidence and become more resilient, is at the end of the day to write down your 10 successes of the day.
Oh,
Because
yes.
what you need to understand is your brain doesn't know the difference between doing an actual symbolic ritual and creating something bigger. So if one of your goals is to save money and you save 10 cents because there was a sale going on when you bought your favorite oat milk, you actually completed something. So that would be considered success. And I find that especially when you're working with teams and entrepreneurs or whatever, they're not acknowledging those small successes. You know, you're supposed to reach out to new clients and you did one great email or one call, it's still a success, you know, and you need to acknowledge it. So by writing down these successes and saying, I did it, then you really kind of are moving into a more positive way as opposed to just worrying. The other thing is I created what I call a fear box. And even for little kids, by the way. So little kids, you could tell them anything they're worried about. They could draw a picture of it or write a word and you put it in the box and then you go dump it like you dump the trash. And for adults, it's really writing down, you know, what you're mad at yourself for because you didn't finish that day or you're worried about this or that. But just by writing it down and literally throwing it in the trash or ripping it up, you're telling the brain that you've let it go. And again, we're back to neuroscience.
Yeah,
So
I'm taking
those,
notes on. Yeah,
those
that's
things are really, really important and help you then go into your sleep time without having all this extra baggage, because you've actually training your brain that you're able to let go. And no matter what is going on in your life, you could be resilient and show up, because it's easy to do that when everything's going great.
right.
However, you need to train your brain that even when things aren't going great, you still have the power and to make different choices. And by making those conscious choices, you're actually ritualizing to the brain, you know, that you're able to do something different. And that's to me where, you know, you can bring in what I call practical spirituality into anything you're doing, whether it's your personal life or your business life or your relationships. That's how you start to weave it in.
I love that one. I was trained by Marty Seligman. My happiness training
Right.
started with Marty.
Great. Yeah.
And he does the three blessings and why, which most of us translated for the business world to the three good things and why. The same kind of thinking, and you turn it into a ritual. But I like this 10 successes because I happen to be one of those people that unless these are big chunks, let's say, got the workbook out to the client today. Well, now getting a workbook out to a client could take me a week because I'm writing and I'm doing a little bit at a time and I'm juggling other things. So I don't really take into account the steps that lead up to that.
Right.
Before
And
I,
that's so important.
I think it is. I think you're
Yeah,
absolutely
I mean,
right.
another ritual that I did that I love is I make what I call a success jar. So I just take a big glass jar, I write the word success on it. And you could do this with, I do this with my team, you know, on a project, or you can, you know, do it by yourself. Every time you take one step towards that goal, you put in a penny, a dime, a quarter, a euro, a dollar, you know, whatever it is. And then when the jar, first of all, you're actually watching it fill up. So you're giving yourself a message, oh, I'm actually moving in the right direction, because you see it getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And then when it's full, I always take that money and reward myself or my team if we're doing it as a group. Doesn't matter. You can buy a pizza for everybody and have pizza day, you know. And again, it's a way of being able to track and watch it and then saying, good job, I did it. And again, remember when we're talking about the creative process, I learned this many years ago from Robert Fritz. He goes, you know, he said there were three stages to the creative process: the creative, the assimilation, and then the conclusion, the saying it's done, the actual is saying it's finished. So you
Okay.
have to have all three in order to move again to the next. Otherwise, you're just constantly like in a run-on sentence.
Wow. I haven't studied Robert Fritz's work in about 20 years.
I know I used to teach his work back in the 80s, and
Oh,
he
well,
worked
we'll
also
have
with Robert Senge, and we have a lot to talk about, right? But no, it was a brilliant course that he created at the time, DMA. And I taught it for many, many years. And it also, between that and my spiritual training with all of these people, gave me a really good foundation.
very cool. I actually know where his book is, and there's a part of me that's like, oh, gotta go grab it. You know,
Right.
we may take this offline and have that conversation because I found his work was very profound at
Yeah,
the
it was. It was very profound. He was one of the leaders, for me anyway, at that time in the 80s, of 70s, 80s, I forgot when probably the 80s,
time.
of really, putting out the idea of visualization. And he wasn't the only one, but he was one who really, made it more popular and understandable.
Wonderful. Now let's talk about visualization. How do you use it? Why does it work? I think that whether it's visualizing a project, visualizing the rest of your life, visualizing your soulmate, whatever it is, it's such an important part of the process. Can you speak to that since you're well trained in it? Can you speak to that?
Again, when you do visualization, and I'm going to say the right way, because part of visualization is actually becoming part of that energy. So it's not seeing your project in the future, is knowing you're in it right now. How does it feel? What does it smell like? What does it taste like? What is the sounds? So using all of your energy, all of your senses. And when you do that, the brain reads it as real. I mean, there have been many studies where people, one of the studies that I remember way back in the early days is this concert pianist who was put in jail, I believe it was in China, and for many, many years without access to any music. And then when he got out, of course, the first thing he wanted to do is play the piano. And he was so much better than when he went in, and people were astounded, and they said, we don't understand, you didn't have a piano. He goes, no, I played every single day in my mind.
Right?
So he imagined how the chords would feel, how his fingers would move, the sound of the music, and he actually increased, his ability. So the same with running, the same, all athletes, as far as I know, use visualization. They
Yeah,
imagine
they
how
do.
does it feel running across the finish line or getting that ball across or, whatever, the sport that they're in. And it has to be a reality now. You have to feel what it feels like now. So you want more money. What does it feel like to have that right now at this moment, to be abundant, to be happy, to be in a relationship? I was just talking to one of my old clients the other day because she was talking about the difference between visualization and manifestation. And I said, one of the things about manifesting is you also have to be willing to receive it. So, you could visualize all of this, and then suddenly you get a phone call about something that, really will give you what you want, but you feel somehow, I'm not ready or whatever, and you sabotage it. So you have to be willing to receive it. So you're visualizing, that promotion to be VP in your company, and then you get the call, okay, and you go, oh, I'm not really ready yet. I need another degree, or I need, and you sabotage it. So
Right.
it's feeling that it's in the present tense. I think that's the most important.
Yeah.
And you
Okay.
don't have to spend a lot of time, but I think it's important to do it when you feel good. You don't want to do it when your energy is very low. So you want to first switch your energy. And you know this because you work with happiness and positive energy, that even if it's some quick breathing exercises or using aromatherapy or whatever it is, that music that makes you calm and focused and happy, and then do the visualization. It'll be much more powerful. I like to do it in the morning and I like to do it at night. And of course, before a meeting, if I'm going into a meeting, I already visualize how I want it to, how the outcome is going to be. So I'm walking in already vibrating on that level. It's, that is the kind of scientific version of law of attraction, because like attracts like, and this is a law of the universe now. It's not just some woo-woo person telling you that. There's a lot of proof about this. So as you connect to that frequency, you already walk into a room more confident and happy or peaceful, and people feel it.
Oh, they sure do. They sure do. I got a funny story about that I'd like to share. I don't want to interrupt your temper, but tell
No,
a
this is your show.
and I'm doing it because I want to have fun. So, and I want the people watching it to have fun with us. People often say to me after they've seen me speak on stage or at a conference or something like that, "Oh, I wish I could do what you do. I wish I could do what you do." And I always say to them, you can. They say, "Oh no, I'm too afraid," or whatever. And I'm very fond of telling them the story. I had a boss that walked into my office one day and told me I had to go out and speak to a group that Thursday night. And I didn't want to go. Now, I ran a division of a company and I was perfectly fine speaking in front of people as long as there weren't more than 6 of them. So if I came to your office and we gathered around your conference table, I could stand there and I could do the whole thing. But a stage or a platform or so I lied about it. And then she asked me again for another occasion, and I lied about it. And then when
Lied in what way? What'd you say? You couldn't do it, or?
I was too busy, I had a doctor's appointment, I had to do something with my kids, I had to,
Right.
I just lied that I wasn't available. And then the third time she wanted to speak to me, she called me down to her office and she sat me right down in front of her and she said to me, "This is your job. You represent my company. And if I tell you to go out and speak, you go out and speak." That's when I had to admit that I didn't feel comfortable doing that. I didn't feel confident doing that. And she said to me, "Well, I just want you to look out in the audience and visualize." I said, "Don't tell me the naked story. I don't want to visualize people naked." She said, "No, you don't visualize them naked. You visualize them all as Girl Scouts." So I said, all right. Well, that didn't help at all. That didn't help at all. But time went on and I took the opportunities. But every time I spoke, I got sick, physically sick before I spoke. And then one day, somebody had told me to read a book called Creative Visualization many years ago. And I'm on a plane going to Hawaii to a conference, and I'm reading the book, and the flight attendant comes over and says to me, "Oh, that book's going to change your life." I went, "Really?" She said, "Read the book. It's going to change your life." So I said, okay. Went on. I read the book, and all of a sudden I had one of those, aha moments. I had been visualizing, but I'd only been visualizing myself tripping, falling, and being stupid. I'd been doing a negative visualization, which is why I got sick every time. So I come home from that trip and I go to my friend who teaches a system called Yokibic. So it's a yoga based system, and she's a meditation teacher. And I said, "We have to fix this." So we created, that's how far back it goes, we created a cassette tape in the meditation in the form of a cassette tape, which I listened to all the time. And the meditation had something to do like I'm going to walk into the room and there's a red carpet that rolled out for me. And the room is filled with love. And it went on and on and on. And I listened to it every day. And gradually, my brain accepted that as the reality. And the first time I walked into a room and got it and had it, it felt as if the red carpet had rolled out for me. It was just the most amazing experience because we had to get through to my thick skull, get through to my brain to say it's safe to do that. Many, many years later, when doing some trauma therapy, I remembered something. When I was 16 years old, my mom was a lawyer at the time. And when I was 16 years old, I was working in her office and she sent me to court to answer a case for her. And this is one of those beautiful Supreme Court buildings in New York, where the judge sits way up high. And I memorized, and I don't really memorize, so it was really hard to memorize what I had to say. That she was in another county on another matter. And he took one look at me and he said, "Young lady, approach the bench." Now, meanwhile, tall man, big voice, big bench. And I'm down there like this, shuddering. And he yelled at me. He said, look, is she your mother? I said, yes, she's my mother. He goes, okay, it's Tuesday. She's in Nassau County and she's playing golf. You get on the phone and find her or she's going to be in contempt. I mean, I got screamed. This is no cell phones. This is, you had to put the quarters in the, oh my God, I was terrified. Little did I know that that was the thing that made me not want to speak to authority at all or speak on a stage. And that popped up one day. I was like, holy, oh my goodness. So there was an event that happened that made me afraid. And I was afraid that I was going to get called out and yelled at like that.
Now, I love that you said that, because I've always thought, when kids are, little and, they're on stage for the first time, they're 5 years old or whatever they are now, 4, probably 3 at this stage, and, the little kid goes to the teacher, it's like, oh, I have butterflies in my stomach. I'm so scared. What would happen if the teacher said, oh, that's great. Butterflies mean that you're excited, that you're going to do great, as opposed to going, oh, that means you're nervous. Don't worry, everybody else is nervous. That little
thing
thought in your head. So every time, and I say this to all my clients, anytime you feel those butterflies, think of it as excitement. There's no difference between feeling nervous and excited. So you get to choose. So if you choose this excitement, not nerves, it already changes. And yes, some people have those terrible trauma experiences like you do, which is always good to figure it out. But those little things, which bring me to the biggest thing, which, because we've both done positive, PQ together. I've done, emotional intelligence, all of that, is the negative self-talk. The negative self-talk, the criticism kills more people, more ideas than anything. And then it keeps you up at night. It's like you have that really mean voice inside of you telling you you're too young, you're too old, you're too this, you're too that, you don't know this, you don't know that. And it just wears you down. So you have to, that's a skill that doesn't happen overnight, as we all know. And that's something that I highly recommend everybody work on, everybody, because we all have those voices.
Oh yeah. There's a program I do called Don't Believe Everything You Think. And I talk about the fact that we have between 60,000 and 80,000 thoughts a day. Most of them are negative and we keep recycling them. So it's a matter of how do you disconnect from the notion that you are what you think. We're pretty much, at least my generation was brought up, I think, therefore I am.
Right.
That was it, I think, because I remember the first time I heard that phrase, don't believe everything you think, I was at a conference in Fort Lauderdale and Marcy Shimoff was thinking. And she said, don't believe everything you think. And it's like, I could remember the feeling in my body. It was like a whole structure started crumbling. I'm like, what is she talking about? Because I thought what I thought was who I was.
Right.
And it's taken me years to dismantle that. The challenge is watching those thoughts and catching them before they can really do damage.
Exactly. And knowing that there may be some useful information in it, but not necessarily in the way it's being said. It's like the difference between someone saying, JoAnna, are you open to some feedback? I think if you had done A and B, it would have been more effective than C, rather than going, oh my God, JoAnna, that sucked. You should have done blah, 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 blah. You stopped listening to me. We're going back to our first conversation in communication. So it's the way you say it, because people have triggers. Everybody has a trigger, and, we all have our sensitive sides. For some people, it's one thing. For some people, it's another. But I love that idea. You are not what you think, and you're also not necessarily what you do. There's a wonderful ritual that I learned about many years ago. It's an African ritual from the Bamba, I think it's called the Bambina tribe, or forgive me, I might be saying it wrong, but it's a tribe in Africa. And the whole thing was if somebody does something wrong in the community, what they used to do is the entire community would come together and the person, it was called the chair ritual. So the person is put in a chair in the center of the circle. And the whole idea of the ritual is that people come up to them and tell them something they did that was really helpful and good. You can't lie. That's one of the rules. So it could be simple as thank you for sharing your sandwich in second grade with me to, you helped my grandma cross the street. So at the end of the ritual, the person is realizing they're not that action that they did, and that they then have to make reparation, whatever it is that they did that wasn't right. And then there's a welcome back to the community celebration at the end. And a friend of mine actually brought this into the school system in New Jersey many, many years ago, very successfully, because the kids really got it that, all right, maybe I did something terrible, in my mind, or I stole something, or I hurt somebody, but that doesn't mean I'm a horrible person. It just means I did something that wasn't right. And then they had to make amends, and then the whole group, the team and the classroom welcomed them back. And I think if we could put that kind of ritual into our prison system, into our school system, into our daily lives, think of how much healthier our society would be. And the same when you're at work and you make a mistake, rather than have your boss go, oh, what an idiot, you're a jerk, or what did you do? Or, just go, wait a minute, this is what, you're good at. And maybe you're in the wrong job. Maybe this is not a fit for you. That's also a possibility. But you could take it so many different ways. But the actual core of it, I thought, was just so, so important.
It's key. It's absolutely key that we don't become that one action, that we don't think of ourselves as that one bad person thing. Having grown up with the background that I did, and I grew up in Catholic schools. I'm Italian Catholic. My parents were lawyers, so I heard way more about what I did wrong than what I don't ever being told, too much about what I did right. Now, maybe that's how I internalized it. I'm sure there was a good deal of it. They were loving people. And at the same time, it set up a pattern of expectation that somebody was going to notice me doing something wrong.
Right. And the key also, when we go back to communication, is that when you give somebody a compliment, it needs to be connected to something real. Just saying you're a fabulous person doesn't really go very far, but just saying, you did a great job staying late to finish that report, that means something. So, and it's the same with kids. You really need to compliment them on things that they're doing so that they can connect the dots. Otherwise, they grow up inflated and just thinking they're so fabulous, everything they do is great. And then they become slightly narcissistic as they get older. So again, these are all, in a way, rituals, and in a way, just practical things to start to integrate. And there's so much talk about finding your purpose and your passion and your happiness, but you can't do that if you don't feel part of something. You need to feel part of a community, part of a company, part of a family. And if you can't do it in your own blood family, you find a family to do it with, your friends, or, so it's really important. These are really important rituals. These are rites of passage, which to me, in the negative, this is why people protest about things they know nothing about. This is why people join gangs. It's because they want to belong.
Absolutely.
And it's not coming from belonging to something really positive necessarily. It's just wanting to belong.
It's just belonging. It's absolutely critical. It's absolutely critical. Yeah.
So we want to belong to things that matter. And, to communities. There's a group called Daybreaker, which I love. They do dance Yeah, they dance at at sunrise because they wanted to have sober dance groups. But now you go to one of their things, there's hundreds and hundreds of people showing up in the morning, all ages, and just because they want to belong to a community that's bringing in joy and happiness and doing good things. So I love all of that.
That's a vibrant community. Now, I remember when it started.
Mm-hmm.
And they teach different, if I recall correctly, different dance steps precisely to give you different chemicals. So if you need more dopamine, you
Right,
do this. And if you need more serotonin, you do that.
right.
It's brilliant. They will be here. It just came across my desk 2 days ago. They will be here in Miami soon.
Oh,
Now, I'm a
good.
ways from Miami, and I may not get down there for it, but I sent it to a friend of mine who lives there, and perhaps I can arrange to be down there for it because I haven't been in that kind of environment for a long time, and I would love to be.
No, they're fabulous. I've actually taught, for them. I love them. They're wonderful, smart, creative people and a lot of energy, and it's fabulous. I love it.
So, any thoughts about how, any more thoughts about how you can bring that into an organization? How you can bring that spirit that they have brought into an organization, so the organization becomes actually they become more profitable. I like to sometimes just jump to the chase. When people are working well together, they're opening up their brain, they're becoming more creative. I mean, the chemicals that you unleash when you are in that positive space, it's the 5-to-1 ratio. It's 5 times more positivity than negativity. So what any thoughts on that and how you can do more of that to get to that 5-to-1 ratio, that positivity, that perfect positivity ratio a little quicker?
Well, it starts with the leadership, as you know. I mean, it's one thing to say, oh, we're going to just be so open and listen to everybody's ideas. And the truth is you don't. And, people know it, so they're not open. So it really has to come from leadership. And I mean, it's always different for different groups. There's not a one size fits all kind of a thing, but
Right.
start to weave in, things into your company that could let people get to know each other in, I think, a non-work environment. I think that's where you really build those muscles and relationships. So in the old days before COVID, most companies did, one day a month, a birthday for everybody who has a birthday that month, and you'd get together and have birthday cake. Or there are some companies that did bagel Fridays, or those kind of things build connections with people. And I know it sounds silly going, who cares about a slice of pizza or something? But I tell you, they do. I mean, many years ago, I worked in TV and I worked on a lot of talk shows. And we used to always give the audience, candy or something. And, I'd always laugh and I'd go, people were willing to come and sit and wait online for hours and hours for, a little Hershey's Kiss or something, but it meant something to them. And some people used to go, oh, well, this show gives me this, and this show gives donuts, and we're coming here because we have, and you go, really? But those little things make a difference. Or I remember a VP at DuPont telling me she used to give out gold stars once a month to people who really exceeded. And she goes, you would think it's ridiculous to get a gold star from these people who are so highly trained and engineered. They're really upset if they don't get their gold star. So
Oh,
symbolic things can make a big difference, highlighting somebody in the company newsletter, who goes way beyond, those kind of things really build connection and loyalty, actually. They
oh,
really
I
do.
agree. I agree. And is it, in your point of view, is it so much harder to do today because we don't have people together? Or can it be done virtually as well as
It's,
in?
I think, because people aren't all together, it could be a little more challenging for sure. I mean, so many people, work in companies where, they're on a meeting with somebody in India and somebody in South America and someone in Boston and New York and California. you know, and they don't really know these people. They get to know them slowly. So yeah, it is. That's why I think on those virtual meetings, even if it's once a month, to do something that's a little more human, so to speak. I mean, during COVID, I remember I have clients who started something called Slumu. It's slime pop-ups all over. There's in New York, they just opened LA, they're in Chicago, Atlanta. And what they do is they'd send slime to the actual people. And then in the meeting, they would teach them how to use it and make funny things. And I know it sounds crazy. This is kids stuff.
Wow.
These were
Wow.
adults and they loved it. And it was, you know, it was fun for them. And it was something out of the box, you know, or,
Oh,
you know, you
love it.
so, you know, you have to learn how to be a little more creative and think out of the box. Again, you have to know your audience. Every audience is going to be slightly different. Not every audience would relate to that. So you have to know who your audience is for sure.
Wow. I love
But
that.
it could definitely be done. Just think out of the box, you know, think of, I mean, whoever would have thought we were doing goat yoga? You know, I mean, it's like when you really think of, you know, what's going on in the world and the trends and the things, you know, I was laughing today because I got an email saying the fashion trend right now in New York are rugby shirts. And I just started to laugh, you know, I mean, so you just never know. So be open, I guess. And again, my favorite all-time quote is somebody out there needs you, so live your life so that they could find you.
I've never heard that.
So very simple. Maybe you're supposed to help one person. Maybe you're supposed to help millions, but live your life in a way so that your light can shine and they could find you.
I just love that. Well, you certainly do that. So tell our listeners how they follow you, find you, in other words, and or in any other ways, how to interact with you and this beautiful energy you carry.
Oh, thank you. Well, I do a weekly newsletter every Tuesday with a lot of free information and videos and things. So just go to barbarabiziou.com, sign up for my newsletter. You'll also find out events that I'm doing. I do, as you said, usually an IG Live once a week, sometime on Facebook or LinkedIn, you know, but that's really probably the best way to find me. And feel free to reach out, barbara@barbarabiziou.com. I'm happy to talk to you about, you know, what we could create together individually or in your company or in your organization.
Sounds fabulous. And you will be, within the week, you will be live at JoAnnaBrandi.tv, and people can see that. And I will send you a copy of this recording for your,
Fabulous.
I can't,
Congratulations. So you know, you need to bless your new venture. That's another thing. Whenever you're starting a new venture, to take time
oh,
to really bless it and have, you know, like-minded people come together to just hold the energy for you. It's like I do Broadway show blessings, you know, or new business ventures or, you know, selling a home, whatever. It's just having that intention, the
right.
intentionality and a collective energy to put out to just bless it is very important.
Wow. And when it started, it was more of a, I want to do more. I want to do more of this because I'm part of the loneliness epidemic. I'm not getting out enough to see people. So this was another way for me to get into deeper conversations with people, the kind of conversations I used to get when I would go to conferences all over the country, and
Right.
late at night would sit down with a Scotch on the rocks with somebody and have these kinds of conversations. And I realized I was missing that. So I just put it into my creative whatever up there and I just let it percolate, and other ideas gathered to it. And
Right.
then I decided to start it. So I designed a flyer and I designed a logo and I, you know, did all that kind of stuff. And I was about 2 or 3 weeks into it when I was at the bank on a Sunday. The bank, I go to TD Bank, and there's a lot of green, and everything about the logo that people are watching this on, when they finally see it's all green, I burst into tears. I mean, big time burst into tears, like, oh my God, what the hell is happening? And I realized that what was happening was that the genesis of this was one of my dearest friends dying.
Mm.
And he was a world-renowned sculptor, always on the growing edge, always. And those are the kinds of conversations. We used to have beautiful conversations. And so I started this, and people who see it, will see an end piece that has his name. His name was Michael Singer. And that this whole thing was for him, in memory of him. So I don't know if that's blessing, but boy, I feel like it's blessed.
Well, the best way to remember someone is to do something to honor their memory. So, yeah.
And this does, because he was an amazing thinker. And I had, for 22 years, I had the opportunity to spend Sunday mornings having breakfast with him, reading the paper. He was only here half a year, so I guess it's maybe 11 years worth of breakfasts, but I was always thrilled to be in his presence. And his work lives on because so much of his work is done in the environment. So his work becomes a living part of the environment. But it was so strange to me. None of that was conscious. None of it was conscious. So, but it all came together beautifully. So thanks for being part of it.
Oh, my pleasure. This was fun. I love doing this. Yeah.
Fun. It is fun. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.